got your camera on back there? You ready to go? I just All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I have 6 o'clock on the old Dell computer. Hopefully your Apple Watches and Timexes have 6 o'clock as well. And in the interest of all of our times, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Doug Hamons. I'm the director of the Coastal Resources Division, and I am very appreciative that you are here this evening. Thank you for coming out on this Wednesday evening. I would normally talk back and forth in front of the audience here, but because we are broadcasting to the inner world tonight, we're going to use the microphone, so we'll be stuck behind the podium. A couple of things just to begin with. First of all, again, appreciate you being here. Tonight, we are here to talk about red drum management. Specifically, this is an informational meeting to tell you about what we're thinking about doing come the month of April in front of the Board of Natural Resources. Dr. Jared Flowers, head of our Research and Surveys Work Unit, will be providing you with a 15-minute informational presentation, followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions about that presentation. When it's all over, you can then either take a paper copy of a survey and fill it out, or click on a QR code and fill the survey out that way. The QR code is very helpful because then we don't have to go back and re-enter the paper copy. So if you're willing to do it that way, we'd appreciate it. We have another meeting tomorrow night in Richmond Hill. We'll repeat the process. Friday morning, we will then have this version of the presentation along with the survey. We'll go live Friday morning. It'll be open for how many weeks? 2. Be open for 2 weeks where the public can watch the same video that we're going to see tonight, do the same survey, helping us to decide which direction we're going to go. I said this is informational, and it is. It's going to inform what we take to the Board of Natural Resources in April. There will be another public comment period on the formal briefing that comes after we brief the board in April. So during the month of May, you'll hear it again in the newspaper and on the interweb, asking for public comment about it, what our formal proposal is. And then, assuming we stick with that, we'll come back probably in the month of September to do final action with the Board of Natural Resources, and then to have that implemented sometime later in the fall, hopefully by September 1st. I have a few folks, I've gotten through all the housekeeping right away. I have a few folks I'd like to introduce to you. First of all, we have one of our Georgia DNR board members in the audience, Mr. Bill Jones, toward the back of the room. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones, for being here. Y'all all have read the lead up to this. You know this term called the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, this compact of all of the Atlantic coast states. That's not to be confused with the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council. That's red snapper, okay? We're here to talk about red drum, and that's the commission. So I'm the administrative commissioner for that, and the outgoing chair of the Pelagics Committee, of the Cyanids Committee, which handles red drum. We have former CRD Director Spud Woodward in the room, who is the governor's appointee to the commission. And then the third commissioner from the state of Georgia is Representative Trey Rhodes, who chairs the House Game Fish and Parks Committee. But he has an ongoing proxy, someone that is always there in his place or can be there in his place, and that's Dr. Carolyn Belcher, who is CRD's Chief of Fisheries. So the three of us make up one vote on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission amongst all the rest of the states. There are a lot of CRDs here tonight, a lot of the biologists, technicians, creel clerks, folks who take a lot of the data and work with that data here. I'm not going to introduce everybody tonight. There's a lot of you here, but thank you so much to all of the CRDers who are here and not only setting up the meeting and all the prep work for the meeting, but the work that those guys do day in, day out. I thank all of you very much in public. So with that said, I'm going to ask Jared to come up, provide the presentation for you, and then I'll come back up after that and referee the question and answer period. Thank you, Jared.
All right, thank you, Doug. So as Doug said, I'm going to talk about kind of where we are in the process, provide some information. Is that better? I do apologize too. I've had a cold and I'm still fighting, so I'm a little bit stuffy. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start talking about kind of the road drug regulation changes, where we are and where we're kind of going. Yeah. There it goes. Okay. So red drum are managed cooperatively along the entire Atlantic coast. So not just in Georgia, and we know a lot of that is because, this is a population that moves around. They might spawn in Georgia, the young fish start in Georgia, South Carolina, wherever, but then they move around as they get older and age out. So participating states work together through a group called the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission that Doug mentioned, the ASMFC, that manages this stock. Okay. Okay. So Georgia is a member of this compact and is obligated to follow fisheries management plans that are developed by the ASMFC, which we do participate in all those activities. In the fall of 2024, Georgia participated in the red drum stock assessment that was done throughout the region. This was the benchmark stock assessment. The stock assessment found that red drum populations in the southern stock were overfished and experiencing overfishing. So just so you know, overfish means that the fish stock is depleted to a level at which its ability to recover itself is impacted. So, there's been enough fishing to where there aren't enough fish for the population to recover at kind of its normal, healthy level. Overfishing is a case where fish are being harvested faster than the population, faster they can reproduce. So this is taking too many fish out in a year, the reproduction doesn't quite catch up, and over time, many years of overfishing can lead to an overfished population. So now, looking at results of the assessment, we have to formulate a management response. So red drum are currently managed by using the spawning potential ratio, which I'll talk about a little bit, but there are different levels for that. So spawning potential ratio, or you'll probably hear it a lot more as SPR, measures reproductive capacity of a population based on two different conditions. This is the reproductive capacity of the stock in a fish condition, or after fishing has taken place, over a reproductive capacity of the stock in the unfished condition. So SPR of 1, which would be an unfished stock, or an unfished stock would essentially have an SPR of 1 or 100%. As the population gets fished down, SPR is going to drop, and at some threshold, the population will be considered overfished. So a higher percentage of SPR means more reproductive capacity in the stock, thus a healthier stock. For red drum specifically, they're managed by the ASMFC with an SPR threshold of 30%. And that is an overfished threshold. So if the population has an SPR below that, it is considered overfished, which is where we are now, and has a management target of 40%. So anything 40% and above would imply that the population is relatively healthy, or healthy enough to be consistently fished. So this is just kind of an illustration of this. So 30% SPR is the threshold, 40% is the target, and obviously a higher SPR is better. So if it's below 30% overfished, not so good. And what we'd like to see is that increasing, recovering SPR from where we are now to get at least, approaching that target or exceed that target. So in 2025, the ASMFC Cyanids Board revised Amendment 2 of the Red Drum Fishery Management Plan. And this is kind of what's been talked about a lot with some of the ASMFC had a public information session on that. But the key thing is this amendment allowed states to set management goals at or above 30% SPR. Prior to this, management had to be set at that 40% target. So the point of the Amendment 2 revision was to account for new assessment projections, because the assessment projections from this assessment were different than the previous ones that we've had. It allows for flexibility for regulation changes, so we're not limited to certain, maybe more drastic changes. And it doesn't unfairly punish states that change regulations after the 2024 stock assessment began. So even though, the stock assessment was finished in 2024, it took about 3 years to complete it, and data was only collected up through about 2022. So because of that, any change that happened from 2022 to 2023 wasn't accounted for in the data, which mainly applied to Florida. So Georgia's current red drum regulations are based on SPR values identified in the 2002 Fishery Management Plan Amendment 2. And the current regulations met management goals based on that prior assessment information. So based on the old 2002 assessment, we were fine. But the management SPR values there were estimated in a different way. So in that case, the states were able to give SPR values to the assessment to the team, and they were actually able to provide an SPR value. So at the time, based on this information, our regulations exceeded 40% SPR. And that's how the other states set their regulations too. But the new 2024 assessment used a different methodology that couldn't replicate that older method for estimating values. This case, for this assessment, they used projections to determine the number of fish in the population associated with different SPR levels. And then from there, we needed to determine the reduction of fishing mortality needed to achieve those SPR levels. So it's kind of working backwards. They had the projections, we were under where we needed to be, and they developed measures of reduction that we needed to achieve to get back to the level we need to. So fishing mortality is going to be something we're going to talk about a lot, and that is the rate at which fish are moved from a population through fishing activities. So this is harvest, discards associated with harvest, anything that's pulling fish from the population. So now I'm going to talk about those reduction levels and kind of where we need to be. As part of the red drum southern stock, Georgia must make changes to regulations in order to reduce fishing mortality. And these reductions, as I said, are necessary to hit those SPR goals. At minimum, the F reductions that Georgia and any other state take need to meet or exceed a 30% SPR level. So fishing mortality is being used as a proxy here for SPR because we can't really do anything directly by SPR, but we can do stuff with fishing mortality by changing regs and things. So when I say F40, that is the fishing mortality level at an SPR of 40%. So they're essentially the same things, but they're essentially referring to kind of the same level of management, but they're different metrics. So you'll see F40, that's, like I said, referring to the fishing mortality at 40% SPR, which is the target. The F30 is the fish mortality at 30%, which 30% of SPR, which represents that minimum, that threshold. So we want to be above that F30 value. So this is a little bit different than the actual fishing mortality reductions we needed. So there are multiple numbers, so just make sure we're on the same page. So based on the assessment results, to achieve a 30% SPR, so achieve that threshold, we need to reduce fishing mortality by 14% from where we are now. To hit a 35% SPR, we need to reduce our fishing mortality by 21.4% from where we are now. And to hit that 40% SPR, we need to reduce mortality by 28%. And these reductions, as I said, are equivalent to those 40%, 30% levels, but they are not exactly the same as the F values. So, like I said, we'll be concentrating more on the F40, F35, F30 as we go on. But those aren't the reduction in fishing mortality that we'll need. So CRD recommends a management goal of 35% SPR. This is a more precautionary approach for uncertainty of fishing than just targeting a minimum 30% SPR. It provides a larger buffer for increasing fishing effort, which we know we have along the coast. It provides a greater potential for regional population recovery. Obviously, the more conservative the measure, the faster the population should recover. And it's less likely to have to make any additional changes in the near future based on any potential assessment changes or new assessments upcoming that might still imply there might be an issue in the population. So, ideally, we don't want to hit that minimum value. We want to be above the minimum to give us some breathing room as things change. So now I'm going to talk about state regulations. So as I said before, South Carolina, Georgia, and the east coast of Florida are all in ASMFC's red drum southern stock. So anything North Carolina and above is a northern stock. It's separate from us. This is only us, South Carolina and Florida. So currently, South Carolina has a slot limit of 15 to 23 inches and a daily bag limit of 2 fish per person per day with a 6-fish vessel limit. They are proposing 6 options based on the results of the assessment to reduce their fishing mortality. And these options have a lower slot limit value of 17 to 19 inches with an upper of 23 to 25 inches. And they're looking at a 6 to 7 inch slot lift. The daily bag limit is either 1 or 2 fish per person, depending on their option. And then they have 6 fish, maintaining that 6-fish vessel limit. Florida is broken up into different management regions. So as I mentioned before, they changed the regulations in the Northeast region right after this assessment began. Northeast Florida, which is most adjacent to us, has a slot limit of 18 to 27 inches, daily bag limit of 1 fish per person per day, a 4-fish vessel limit, and no captain or crew retention. Indian River Lagoon, which is the region below the Northeast region, has a full catch and release only regulation in place, and a lot of that has to do with more of pollution in the population. So as far as Georgia regulations, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of our regulations. Most changes that we had were in the 80s and early 90s, and that was as the population was recovering from its all-time historic lows in the 80s. There were really, some real concerns about the population. But our last change and our current regs went into place in 2002, which is 24 years. So it's been a while since we have changed anything after all that kind of initial change that, where there was a lot of kind of working back from basically having no regs. So currently our regulations are 5-fish daily bag limit with a 14 to 23 inch slot, no vessel limits. As far as our options moving forward to meet the management goals, we have to change regulations. We cannot meet that with where we are, but we do have multiple options to achieve that. Starting with some of the simple things, just looking at daily bag limit. Any bag limit or 2 fish or less will achieve the required reductions. So if we don't want to change anything, just the bag, we can go 2 fish or less, so 1 or 2 fish. If we would just want to look at changing the slot without changing the bag, the lower slot length must be about 16 inches or greater, but we can't retain red drum greater than 27 inches per the FMP. So we can move up, we can move the lower end to a certain point, but we can't move the upper higher after 27 inches. Well, it make the most sense for having a combination of slot and bag changes. So using a combination of slot and bag changes provides more options, and there might be smaller changes, more incremental changes to the bag or the slot based on, versus having to change one or the other. And we can tailor the changes better to serve the interests of the red drum fishery and the interests of the public. So these are the 5 options that we're proposing, and I'll kind of go through incrementally. So the first 2 options involve a 16 to 25 inch slot with either a 4-fish or a 3-fish bag limit. Both of these achieve the F40% level, so they reduce fishing mortality to a level where we'll hit an SPR of 40%. Even though they achieve the same, the 4%, the 4 fish bag limit is less conservative than the 3 fish bag limit. So they both will hit 40%, but a 3 fish bag will get a greater reduction. Moving on to a 15 to 24 inch slot, a 3 fish bag limit will achieve an F35% level, while a 2 fish bag will achieve the 40% level. And this is just going up or shifting the slot up 1 inch. Something to remember too, most of the change that happens with moving the slot comes from the bottom end. So the only reason we're moving the upper end is to maintain our slot width. We're not moving the slot up, that 25 or 24. We're not really doing that for a specific management goal other than just keeping the slot to be a similar width. And then finally, we have our 14 to 23 inch option, so it keeps the slot where it is. But again, that goes to a 2-bag fish, 2-bag fish limit, and that only achieves the F35% level. So all 5 of these options satisfy the management requirements that we need. And this is kind of, I think, at the end of the night, this is kind of where we're going to get the public input to see what's the preference for these. So in addition to these options, we also have some additional management options that won't make a huge difference on their own, but it will have some incremental benefit. One of those is a vessel limit. So this is a possession limit on the total number of fish on an individual vessel in addition to the bag limit. So, if you have more than 4, 5, 6 people on the boat, this might kind of limit those numbers. But from what we see for our dockside information, for the average trip, this won't have much of an impact depending on where the level is. But other states have this. As South Carolina has this. Florida is using this for red drum management, and it's a good way to kind of basically kind of protect against some of the times where there might be a lot of fish on a boat or potential for a lot of fish on a boat. The other option we're looking at are charter and captain crew limits, and the question here is, should a charter captain and crew be allowed to retain a bag limit of fish on a charter trip? I said other states are starting to prohibit this now. It's a question that's out there, and we've posed this before in some of the other town halls we've had. So as far as next steps, as we've talked about, we're seeking public input for these new regulations. This past December, we presented the preliminary options to Finfish Advisory Panel. Then early February, we took their feedback, we worked on it to develop our options, and now we're here, where we're taking these options out to y'all, to the town halls, and putting it online and trying to collect a public input on these regulations. Early March 2026, well, I guess starting now, but ending in early March, we'll have the survey online done. And then April of 2026, we'll brief the DNR board on proposed rule change. At that point, the final proposal will go out for public comment, which Doug mentioned will be the official public comment for everyone to kind of go through and provide their input. And after that process, the implementation date for the all-new measures for South Carolina and Georgia will be going into effect by September 1st. So that's what I have for just information. Here's the QR code and the instructions to get to the regulations or get to the survey. So we might have some more information, more instructions as we go. But if there are any questions now on the talk, on any of the background of the assessment, I think now the time we'll have that. We'll have folks running around with microphones. If you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll catch you with the mic.
So,
and then, and if you have questions online, put those in the chat, and we'll try to get to those as we go.
So I forgot to introduce another group of folks, and that slide reminded me. Thank you. We also have a couple members of our Finfish Advisory Panel. Captain Jared DeVincent's here, and Chef Dave Halyard is here. Members of our Finfish, Robert, are you now on it? Yes, Robert Hale from Savannah. Did I miss or not see someone?
It's already on. Hey, good. It's already on.
Oh no. Clement Collins. Sorry, Clement. So, yeah, thank you. So 5 members of the Fin Fish Advisory Panel. We're providing you 5 options that we want to talk about tonight and you have questions on, but just know that the table of options is quite large. And the more options that are out there, the more opinion that gets put out there, the cloudier the responses are, right? So with the help of the Fin Fish Advisory Panel, we narrowed those down to the 5 that were presented tonight. But before we get to those 5, I want to entertain questions to Jared about the presentation or about the commission process or any of those things. So, questions?
I got a question, Doug.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate y'all doing this, putting the town hall meeting on, because this offers us a wonderful opportunity to discuss and get the community engaged. My name is Mark Noble, and I started a 501c called the Genesis 126 Project Game Fish Status. It says what it means, but that's an introduction, so to the point. I see the options here. Great presentation, by the way, because we're all here to see about saving our red drum stock because that's vitally important. But the reason why I'm here tonight is because I wanted to see the scope and scale of what the options are. And they seem to be very limited, so we only have a few choices to make. Since I believe that a red drum really can't live inside of the system all by itself, it can't sustain itself without surrounding forage. My question was simply this. This doesn't appear to be based in fishery science. So I know this is limited scope. We don't have option 6 to discuss, but perhaps we will when we get a formal opportunity to submit to the public record or for the record. But anyways, Doug, thank you. It's an ecosystem-based decision based on fishery science because many of us have ponds. We understand the food structure that has to be there to support the only fish that has game fish status, and I see it as an indicator that if the only fish we have protected is showing this sign of stress, we might need to look at the ecosystem because after all, the ecosystem is what sustains long-term stability because after all, y'all, we're not looking to just stop it. We're not looking to just have a fragmented approach. We actually want to see it not just stop, we want to see it incrementally increase and return to abundance. I just think that there's some other options that we should consider besides this, but we got to do something. And Doug, again, gracefully thankful for you allowing this opportunity because I think that we're going to have an opportunity here to see some enlightenment about what is really going on in our fishery. So thank y'all very much.
Is there a question out there? Yes,
I have a question.
wait, I'm sorry. Jared.
I have a quick question. Jared DeVincent from Georgia Saltwater Anglers Association and On the Fly Outfitters. It's more of a clarification, Jared. When you put up the options on the screen, I noticed whether it was 4 fish or 3 fish, same slot, they were both F40%. Do you have a more specific F value as we were to change the slot and have a different number of, or change our creel limits? Or is it just, for this purpose of presentation, you just capped it, it's 40% plus, let's just say?
For simplicity, I kept it to the 40%. We do have the values. I think there is probably, I think it was like an 8% difference in reduction between the two.
Okay.
So it is a significant reduction, but it's still both are above 40%.
And another point of clarification for these regulation options, the time frame for recovery.
So, so I don't have that exactly, but that is in the stock assessment report. It was
26 years for F30?
Yeah, for a full recovery, it was 26 years for F40, right? Yeah, because
There's 1 year difference between F35 and F40.
yeah. So initially, to get above 30%, depending on 30 or 35 and 40, there's 5 years and 6 years. So that's getting from below 30 to above 30, and then the long time frame to 40, it's 26 years.
Okay.
And the key point, though, between 35 and 40 is it's 1 year, 1 year difference. And so that's why the department is looking at the middle ground of 35. But again, that's also open for public comment, or public
Understand.
opinion.
If you could, just point of clarification, if you could provide those values and the time frame for recovery plus a more specific F value, I think that would help in the decision making when you put it out to vote. So if we were to make a change September 1st, you're saying for the top option would be 26 years to recover to an F40 value.
From 30 to 40.
From 30 to 40.
26 years. Okay, I think that's a very important piece of information. It will help people select how aggressively they want the redfish to rebound in our fishery. Thank you.
And I will say too, that is managing at F40 and not necessarily above F40. So if you're above F40, it might be shorter than 26 years.
And also, if you go to our website, if you click on this and it takes you to the survey, there should be also a link to the website. Everything that we've presented in the past, everything we've presented to the, several years ago, everything we presented to the Finfish Advisory Panel, and all of the information that went into the assessment is all there, including the full table, which provides you all of the options that we considered. So all of that information's there. We're not trying to hide anything. It's just simplifying it for mass audience. Yes, sir.
Hey, my name is Tim Cutting. Just to reiterate, there's no difference between 4 and 3 on that chart?
On the chart, there's no difference, but that's simplifying things at F40.
Like what, minor percentages or something?
There's a 5% difference in the amount of reduction between 4 and 5.
And I know it's not an option,
4
it's
and
not
3.
on a chart, and you are keeping a 9-inch slot, which is what it currently is now in other states. If you went to 17 to 26, which would be a 9-inch, or 18 to 27, does that achieve even a higher percentage?
I'd have to look at it, but I think those would hit F40 or above, so.
And is it not listed only because you're just trying to limit the options for now?
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's reality, right? And so the higher you go on the bottom end, the greater the savings on the SPR. Absolutely. If we went to 18 to 27, keep all the fish you want. Okay?
I don't know it'd be all you want, but
But that's the reality. 18 to 27 solves the issue.
so why is that not a listed option?
Because it's not a realistic option for the mass audience, right? I hear the various opinions from everywhere, right?
Agreed.
And I know that 18 to 27 won't survive, okay? I know that there's lots of options.
It won't survive as far as the vote.
Public comment, public debate, let's put it that way. What I think we've got here are reasonable options that find the middle ground across Georgia English.
Well, and just a couple real quick
And
ones.
let me just say one more thing.
Sure.
I don't mean to track, but it's a survey in that we're providing opinion, but it's not a vote in that we're not electing the next redfish president, right? Because whatever you guys tell us you're interested in is what we're going to consider, right? But there's lots of stuff that gets put into this besides just the survey.
And I have more, but I'll just make it quick and go back to the 3 and 4. I mean, for the public, like you're saying, like not consider a bigger slot. Isn't it a no-brainer to be 4 instead of 3?
That sounds like.
You know, for those that want to keep a lot of fish. And I love the presentation, the no take on captain, that's good with me, and even a boat vessel limit. I don't know how you enforce the no captain thing, that's a little bit of a problem, but I think 95% of the captains in the room would highly agree to that. And thank you, great presentation.
Dave in the back, microphone.
I had a question. So just yes or no, is this based in fishery science? And if it is, then why is there no information on the other species that support the redfish? Because after all, it's a ecosystem and there's a food web. So
If we had enough data to manage on an ecosystem basis, we would be doing it. The catchphrase is ecosystem-based management, but there's a reason why it's not done wholesale. Council's trying it, commission's trying it with various species, but we have enough trouble managing a single species, much less bringing in the food web.
Okay, so-
But the comment that was Captain Nobles made earlier about these 5 options not being science, I'm sorry. Everything that he presented was based on science. The assessment is everything we've got, right? And if we're not going to argue about it. It's based on science.
Okay.
Question from online says, at what point in the recovery stage do we see a change in regulation, and how often are you retesting the fish population under more stock assessments?
Go ahead, stock assessment schedule.
Yeah, so the stock assessment schedule is roughly every 4 or 5 years. It might depend, it might be a little different now because MRIP's changing and evolving, so we're going to have to wait on those results. But typically it's 4 or 5 years, especially for an or a species like this that has high interest and good data sources.
So our goal is every 5 years in the commission. It's the same goal in the council as well, but the council manages 53 species. The commission manages 27 species. And there's a limited number of assessment scientists out there. So the poor little gray grunt gets kicked down the road every year, right? So there's some species that we simply can't do assessments on. There's some that you don't have enough data on. There are some that are important that you bring them up every couple, 3 years. But red drum's on a 5-year cycle. Next question.
Hey, y'all. Could you please remind us of the process from the management side moving forward? What's the process and what are the layers of when and where the decisions are made?
So, again, we're going to do public survey for the next several weeks online. We'll take those back, see what it all says, make a recommendation in the form of a briefing that'll go to the Board of Natural Resources Tuesday, April I'm going to say the 24th, but don't hold me to that. So that's a briefing. So the next day when the briefing's over, there'll be an official public notice that goes out. It goes to the legislative committees. It goes to, it goes to a bunch of different folks, but it's also put out in the papers, gov delivery, online, all those sorts of things. That's then a 30-day or so public comment period. That's official comment that comes in on the briefed board rule. So assuming there's no changes that occur within that, then we will bring it back at the next available opportunity. We're going to have it out there for May, for the months of May. We possibly could bring back in June. If we don't hit the June deadline, there is no July board meeting, so then we go to August. So we'll either see this again in June or August. If something were to happen and we got it wrong with the briefing, we would have to come back to the public and rebrief and start the clock over again. So another public comment period before we get to final action. But let's just say that we hit August. That's the end of the fourth Tuesday in August. That's final. If the board approves it, then we have a 20-day wait period for the Secretary of State to publish it. And technically, it could be effective as early as that. But our goal would be September 1st with actual implementation January 1st. That's our goal, was January 1st.
So it starts with the CRD.
Yep.
It goes to the DNR board.
Yep.
Then it goes to legislature.
Nope. The legislature has an opportunity to comment on it if they choose, just like you do.
Right.
Yep.
So then after the board.
So the legislature has the opportunity to say no, they don't think this is a good idea. If the board approves a rule over that, the next year with a 2/3 vote, the legislature can overturn a board rule. So it behooves the department to always be in lockstep with the legislature when you make a rule. So that's part of the compromise that we face in trying to develop rules for redfish. Questions?
Hey, Doug, I've got one. I'm David Edens. South Carolina and Florida are recommending much more stringent regulations than we are. So the question I have is why? Why are we not implementing or suggesting those same regulations? And two, how does South Carolina and Florida feel about it? Do they feel like Georgia's cheating them?
So we work very closely with our neighbors. I would say out of the 15 member states, we have the best relationship with Florida and South Carolina. particularly over cyanids like red drum. We work very closely together. We don't have 2 million anglers, almost. We balance the resource needs with everybody. But my running joke is it's a
enjoy this fishery, and looking at our neighboring states that have 1 fish per person creels in North Florida and in South Carolina, I'm echoing the sentiment of Captain Edens here is why are we not being more aggressive? We've already lost 5 years. If you remember in 2022, you all did a great job hosting 2 redfish town halls, 2 panel discussions. You had an open comment survey that had 1,300 respondents. And that result was 75% of those respondents said they're dissatisfied with the redfish fishery. That was in 2022. We're fast forward 3.5, 4 years. We were told at that point redfish regulations weren't going to be put into place. I believe you proposed a 3-fish creel at that point in time. You had slot changes. You were going to put a vessel cap. In 2022, we were told to hang tight for the 2024 federal stock assessment results. And what we're talking about today still is that federal stock assessment for the southern states says we are overfished and we're continuing with overfishing. Now, that's a red alert to me when I saw that in 2024. Here we are in 2026, still talking about what regulations we should be putting into place when other states are proactively and actively changing the regulations. Why are we not being more aggressive, and why are we missing the key point of data here is how long this takes to recovery. I think that's crucial. You just want us to make a quick cliff note looks at what you're presenting, but you've limited our options, and we don't, what about if there's some of us to vote for a quicker recovery? We want to rebound further. Redfish don't know borders. They don't know when they change over from Georgia to Florida to South Carolina. I think we should be in line with those other neighboring states to have a more aggressive and a quicker rebound for our fishery. This is our state game fish. Thank you.
I want to make one small point just so that it doesn't get out there in the vernacular, right? This is not a federal assessment. This is not the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council, which is federal waters, right? This is an interstate assessment. This is inside of 3 miles. This is the states working together. Yes, NOAA has a seat at the table, and yes, NOAA scientists are involved in the assessment, but it's mostly state-led. That's a small point, but we have a tendency to criticize the feds, and legitimately so sometimes. Stuff that's on YouTube now, isn't it? But I just want to make that point. And I'm not, get your friends to send in what they think. I mean, I hear you, I understand you. I don't know that I can get any better than what we presented up there.
We have done that, and when the SPR, when the Addendum 2 was put into place with Section 3.3, we had 295 votes to 2 votes, and yet SPR was still changed.
Yeah.
It was decreased to 30%, although it may have been decreased for the short term, it still was decreased, which effectively takes away our warning. Now, I'm happy to see F-35 and F-40s up here in your presentation,
Yeah.
but the public spoke in the open comment survey in 2022, and we spoke again with SPR changes, and we changed SPR anyway, even though it was 295 votes to 2, with 382 written comments.
Yeah, and so what Captain DeVincent's referring to was the decision process at the commission level. And again, it's not just Georgia making a decision at the commission level. We have to take all of this into account. The comments that he's referring to were overwhelmingly in favor of going to F-40, right? That's where those comments were. We chose F-30 with none of the states wanting to do F-30, but we did that because Florida had already made its changes. The only place for Florida to go was to 0, and nobody felt like Florida needed to go to 0. Their changes hadn't been taken into account in that assessment yet. But nobody's targeting F-30. That's just the basement that we have to stay above. Yes, the comments that came in during that were for F-40, and I got it. Absolutely understand that. Question?
Hey, Doug, it's me again. Congratulations. What you said there was wonderful because, see, a lot of us are not young people. I mean, I'm 64 years old, grew up around here. Y'all know who I am, been here for a long time, love this place dearly. Here's the question. Would CRD entertain something that would expedite this very narrow scope that y'all are tracking in? So that is exactly the question. Would CRD consider a narrow scope that was based in fisheries management that dealt with the ecosystem instead of a single fish in a fishery? It's odd to me that we're talking about a single fish when obviously there's some other indicators. I don't want to go on any further because there's a lot of information. Y'all got some of that information there, so looking to get that entered into the record at some time. But anyway, Doug, thank you for what you're doing because we do need legitimate regulations for redfish. I mean, that's all of ours gold. We don't want these fish to go away, not in our lifetime, but one thing we do want is we want them for long-term sustainable purposes so that we got them perhaps before we all die.
Questions?
You didn't get the question? Oh,
So you said, would we consider?
yes.
And what I tried to explain is, we've got a deadline of September 1st-ish to get our regulations implemented, and I tell you, we're not going to start over. We're not going to go back to 0 and try to add in multiple species that I don't have data on in order to try to manage that.
Well, I'm glad for the clarification because we're here for input.
Yep.
And, oftentimes, that a lot of us feel like we don't have that opportunity. So I appreciate the opportunity here. We think this scope is very limited. I don't think this is very realistic as far as sustainable management because this seems like it's just going to be manage it and freeze it because there's no implementation plan here unless you're talking about a 30-year or a 40-year plan to rebuild it. Why can't we deal with the matrix
So understand that
of the system itself?
understand that if we do anything that's 35 or above, that the plan is less than 6 years. If it's 40 or above, it's less than 5 years. There's a year difference between 35 and 40. Tim, did you have another question?
Yeah, just real quick.
That gentleman at the end of it.
Just from what I'm getting, these are probably the options that are going to be presented. I mean, just between me, to be truthful, that's probably what you're going to bring. There's,
Probably, that is.
There's going to be no 17 to this or anything. I just wonder if the general public knows or have seen what you're going to bring, or is this the only way you're going to get it out there?
So tonight and tomorrow night, public town halls. Then it goes live online Friday morning. So we have a professional AI-generated voice. As much as I like Jared, there's a script that's basically what Jared gave you tonight, but it is so smooth. So the public will be able to hear that presentation. They'll be able to open every document that we've got out there on what we've done in the past, what we're doing now, and then they'll see the options. So the public will be able to take that same Survey Monkey as you are being asked to do tonight.
So let them know these are the options, and by saying, I want 5 the way it is, or I want to go 17 to 20, those aren't options.
Correct.
I think the public needs to know those are your choices.
Well, hopefully when you see the survey, you'll know that these are the options.
Hello, Doug. Mark Drury, Camden County. Curious about your catch mortality numbers and how you arrived at them, and I'm asking in light of the fact that I have caught up the same fish up to 5 times and released it within just a 2-hour period. I'm a light tackle fisherman, which means I'm not getting them in real quick like you should so that you can release them as least stress as possible. It takes me a while. But the 5th time I released that one fish, he was just as frisky as when I caught him, and he was in the 18, 19-inch range. One other point, breeding stock data. I've read that both from the commission and our own CRD that breeding stock data at best is unreliable, almost to the point of being non-existent on a species that has a 60-plus year lifespan. All of the breeding stock lives offshore. How are we arriving at all of this if we don't even really reliably know what the breeding stock is? And thank you.
Well, I mean, that's definitely a weakness in the data, and that's been recognized, and it was in the assessments about the older fish. We do have some data on it. When there are our longline survey and South Carolina's longline survey that does provide information, but that is definitely a weak point. And that's one of the reasons the prior assessments never came up with an overfished or determination, because they couldn't figure that out based on the model structure. This one, it's a different model. It went the extra step based on, things like, annual mortality, number of fish going in, and it was able to estimate a stock value. Now, is that estimate great? I don't know, but it was the estimate that came out, and we do have some data to back it up. As far as the mortality, that was just, there is an estimated release mortality that comes out of literature. It's been published. It's been used by other studies. This assessment, other assessments. So that was what was used. There was questions about whether or not it's accurate, but it was used for what it is. But then again, one of the things to remember in all this is discard mortality is just it's just a percentage of fish that get thrown back. Some percentage die. Every state in the Southeast is seeing a lot more fishing effort, a lot more fish being caught. Even if they're not getting harvested, more getting caught, which leads to more mortality, either indirectly or directly from being handled. So that is overall one of the issues we're facing.
I know I'm already asked. I was just basing it on 60 years of eating them, catching them, and releasing them. I consider the reds to be the crawlers, probably the toughest fish species we have. And I know I personally never had one guy that I saw that I released. And I'm usually in small drainages. If one came up and floated, that's it.
Yeah, and there was question about that, and people, on the assessment committee thought that it might need to be adjusted, and there's some, I think South Carolina's doing a study, we have some tagging information the next go around that might help improve that estimate.
So we have an online question. Why not restrict bull red fishing during the spawn? So one, we don't allow for the harvest of bull reds, obviously, right? 27 inches or above. 23 inches or above. You see the difficulty of trying to agree here, right? If I told you you could not go on the sandbars or the shoals or the beaches and fish for bull reds, one, I know what your reaction would be. Two, those guys back there in green, thank y'all for being here, by the way. I don't know how they would enforce that even. So I think it's a public campaign that needs to happen, and there are groups of folks during the fall who really push bull red fishing as an experience. And I think that we could back off of bull red fishing somewhat. We'll never get it out of our system because, hey, a 40-inch bull red's fun to catch, right? But yeah, I don't know that we're going to ever be able to regulate that.
So Jim Looney, Glenn County. Looking through the data when it came out a couple months ago, one question I have is one of the data points that I just didn't see is forecasted saltwater permits for 5 and 10 years. Do you have that data, or what did you use? Did you use current permits, or did you forecast?
As far as that, I believe for the assessment, they just assumed kind of a level.
Well, that's not very realistic.
Well, I know it's not realistic, but the question came up on what value to actually use. This is our fishing effort since 2009. South Carolina was seeing an even more drastic increase. Again, it's another reason that we're recommending 35 or 40% to be conservative, because we are kind of worried about this, and to have, a more conservative regulation would help address this. Part of the reason it wasn't included in the projections because we weren't really sure, how realistic this would be, or, is this a continuing trend? Because we did kind of flatten out until last year.
You could probably do a regression model based on population, which you can get from the state. You've had 400,000 increase fishing trips in 5 years. It's probably safe to assume with the population growth of Georgia, it's going to be another 400,000.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of missing in this analytical work.
And this is why we tried to, part of the instance of, 2022, why we wanted to kind of get ahead of this. But like I said, it's a reason to be more conservative now if you can.
Okay, so let's move. We got another question?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, I'm Toby Murphy, Glenn County. Why is the only option being considered to reduce catch limits? What are we doing to grow the population, not just stop the death?
Are you referring to hatcheries? When you say, what else?
So,
what else do
my
you do
question
besides
is-
reduce harvest?
What are we doing to I guess, grow the hatchery,
So
create a better environment for the young fish to grow?
yeah, so we do all that we can and all we can afford with habitat, right? Paul Metter's habitat enhancement units in the room. We're constantly trying to build artificial reefs. We're building oyster reefs inshore. We're doing everything we can within financial constraints for habitat restoration. Although I would say that Georgia's in a much better condition than, say, our neighbors to the south is. So yeah, habitat's one of it. Pollution, you can argue all forms and levels of pollution, whether it be septic tanks that are too close to the water, whether it be runoff from farms, all those sorts of things. That's a much bigger picture outside of CRD's purview, right? Not using that as an excuse, but it is. And then hatcheries. Who has hatcheries in the southeast? Let me think. South Carolina and Florida. And they're both having to take reductions the same as we are. So I would ask, is the millions that both South Carolina and Florida put into their hatcheries doing what they wanted to do? I think management is the most efficient, cost-effective method, aside from putting tons and tons of fish in the water, and still maybe having a reduction needed. Sir?
Super cheap to do nothing.
Super cheap to do nothing, that's right.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jackson White. I fish here in Glenn County. So is the numbers, the F rates, the SPR, all of that stuff, is that just based on just being fishing and putting the fish back in the water? Is that what those numbers are based off? Or is there any number based off of these fish grow by eating? They don't just grow by we put them back in the water and that just makes the fish grow. So if these fish need to grow to a certain size to be able to sustain a population, what are we doing about helping feed the fish? I know there's all these fish out here. I think he mentioned earlier that, that gray grunt is just down the list, but so does that just put redfish at the priority of everything else and not the everything else that needs to feed and everything else that's going to feed them? So if we don't have fish that can eat something to grow to that size, I think we can agree that if a fish eats more, it's going to grow faster. But if it doesn't have that resource to be able to feed, how fast can it get there? I think the fly fishing guide over here was talking about these fish 26 years from now. I'm 21. 26 years from now, I'll hopefully still be around, God bless. But those fish are going to be there from a long time from now. How we can get them faster if they eat more, if they have something better to be able to manage to be able to eat.
Don't walk away from here, y'all, thinking that it's going to be a 26-year recovery. Please, don't walk away thinking it's going to be 26 years. Our target is 35 or better, and that's a 5 to 6 year recovery, okay? It's 1 year difference between 35 and 40. The 30% is the 26-year recovery, and that's not our goal. That's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for above that. So please don't walk out of this room and tell folks it's going to be 26 years to recover redfish, because that's not what we're headed for. Secondly, again, we could discuss ecosystem-based fisheries management all evening. Whether there's, more pinfish out there, whether there's more, mummy chugs, whether there's more fiddler crabs or whatever else that's in that diet of that redfish. I don't catch a whole lot of skinny redfish. They're mostly nice-looking redfish, right? I think we would see it if we had a malnourished, undernourished population of redfish. They're eating. Are they eating enough? I don't know. I haven't asked.
Well, they go from shrimp to fish as they get bigger, right?
Well,
they don't, like Bull Red's not eating little tiny shrimp all the time, right?
He's liking mullet. Right?
He's liking mullet. He's liking
whiting,
groundfish, whiting. I put a whole whiting on and catch a Bull Red, right?
Yep.
So where's the Atlantic croakers and all the spot croakers and everything?
There is an assessment for spot. There is an assessment for croaker. Neither one of those are overfished or undergoing overfishing.
Well, they're on the de minimis list, right?
Okay, so do we really want to talk about de minimis lists?
Well, I'm just saying, we don't have to talk about it, but they're on there.
Yeah, so there's not a de minimis list, okay? So again, let's talk, the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission has various species boards that we manage, right? Whether it's pelagics, bluefish, cyanids, whether it's lobster or American eel or horseshoe crabs. Let's take horseshoe crabs as an example. Every state has them. Every state along the coast, well, maybe Maine, I don't know, but everywhere, every state is part of the management plan. But there's this term called de minimis, and it ranges around the 1 to 2% number. If I harvest in the state of Georgia less than 2% of the coast-wide average, then I can ask to be de minimis, which means that I don't have to do some of the things that the other states have to do. I am allowed to get out of those regulations or that. But what Georgia has chosen to do with horseshoe crabs is to meet the minimums: 25 crabs per person, 75 crabs max per boat. What else, Carolyn, on horseshoe crabs? And I'm just using that as an example. So we're de minimis for horseshoe crabs. We're de minimis for eel. We're de minimis, come on, help me. There's a handful of stuff we're de minimis in. All that means is we harvest less than 1% of the coastwide average. The fish occurs here. The fish may swim past here. Bluefish, we're de minimis in. We may catch a bluefish every now and then, but it doesn't mean there's a list of fish that these fish are de minimis. Thank you. Dawn reminded me that we are more conservative on spot and croaker than other. Other states have a 50 fish bag limit on those fish.
We don't have a
So, anyway, before we get to the survey, any more questions?
Yeah, I just
Yes,
have one question real quick, Doug.
We don't have a limit on any of that.
Just to confirm, when you said that you're not trying to be at 26 years, right? on recovery. And that's kind of, I think, what everyone understood based on those options, that any of those options would be at 26 years. So I'm happy to hear you say 6 years. But is there, for instance, and I know it's not up there and it's probably going to be, how quick will the recovery be if we did go to one fish? Just, I know it's
Less than 5 years.
Less than 5 years, okay. And then on the complete opposite spectrum, how even once the changes are made, and I'm sure it's a problem now as well, we know, how do you even regulate it period? I mean, I know the guys in green do a good job, and there's not so many of them, and there's, 2 million people on the water per year. How many boats can they get to out of that 2 million to say, most guys are just like, all right, I don't care what the limit is. This is what I'm taking, and I'm taking what I'm taking. I mean, they can only do so much. I mean, maybe it's a hard question to answer, but.
Well, it's an
reality.
impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
But I will say this, so there's science, right? That's involved in a lot of the decision-making. There's social science where a lot of economists come into questions. And there's also a law enforcement. This is all within the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission's structure, right? There's also a law enforcement committee. Anything that the biologists are working on, that the managers are working on, we pass it over to law enforcement committee to get their opinions on, is it an enforceable regulation or not? And there are some that they come back and for instance, when you're looking, and I know I'm going to switch to the council on you, I'm sorry. But when you're looking at a closed area offshore and you have this polygon that's got all these points on it, right? Absolutely impossible to manage. If you're going to have a closed area somewhere, it's a square or a rectangle, right? Straight lines. That's just an example. That's a bad example. I shouldn't have used that for the council, but anyway. So yeah, enforcement's it's key. Hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to tell you 1-800 turn-in poachers, but hopefully, it's a community thing, right? You know when there's a guide who's taking more than he should. You know when there's an angler who comes in and, the cooler's heavier than it should be. It's a community thing too.
Doug, one last question. Jared here. Thank you for answering that, because that was one of my questions is, if we were to go to one fish, how fast would that recovery be? And you said 5 or 6 years.
One fish would be less than 5 years.
Less than 5 years we'd be recovered. That's terrific news. My only proposal here is, with the options that you've determined based on what you think the population wants to hear, could we add one more item, one more option to vote that is a little bit more aggressive? I could also propose or request that you add the years to recovery to the online survey on SurveyMonkey, which I'm sure is easily editable at this point. Just add in parentheses next to the option how long it will take to recover, because I think that's an incredibly important piece of information here for those of us that want to see the fishery recover in our lifetimes. And a more aggressive option, when you give 4 fish and 3 fish, if you can add a 2 fish option, if you think 1 fish is unreasonable, I still feel we should add those options there, but you feel it's unreasonable to ask that, then leave it off. But I think this is an opportunity here at Redfish Town Hall. You want to solicit our feedback and our feelings. I know a tremendous number of concerned anglers and captains that want a quicker recovery, and I feel like we should have that option available to us when we put this out to vote. Thank you.
I can't disagree. I mean, obviously from a conservation side, you're on target. There's lots of things running through my mind. I don't know if you are a social media guy. I try not to be. I made the mistake of going on Facebook and reading comments about what we're doing. There's 155 as of last week that say the opposite thing, right? This is a very tough place to be, trying to make the decision, right? I'm not sure whether the data that's in the online right now ready to go has the years to recovery in it. We can do that in the information that we provide. We can do that. I don't know that we're going to adjust our SurveyMonkey because it's already ready to roll. The survey cards are already printed, and quite honestly, when I open a open comment box, all of a sudden I've got 1,000 people saying 1,000 different things, and it doesn't coalesce around a single answer. I don't get to.
I understand that. I'm not asking for an open comment box.
Yep.
Survey monkeys are easily editable.
No,
I'm asking to add the parentheses of years to recovery
Sure.
to the survey monkeys so people can see that front and center when they make their vote.
All right, so here's how I'm going to answer it, Jared. I will go sleep on it, and we'll have tomorrow night's meeting, and before we release Friday, we'll decide whether to do that or not. But I'm not going to say in open public right here that, yes, I'm going to do it, or no, I'm not. We'll think about it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just me one more time. You said earlier that a 18 to 27 inch slot with a 5-fish limit would address this whole thing. What's the possibility of getting that on there as an option? And second point, curious about your methodology to get to the impact, the actual participation within the fishery right now. Because actual saltwater license sales are really kind of a little bit flat, and I think 10 years they've only increased like 13%. How do you arrive at a 40% increase when the license sales just don't add up to it?
We don't have a saltwater license in the state of Georgia.
Well, we got our SIP permits.
We have SIP.
Yeah.
And SIP have gone up, right? We're at 320 and some change, but this is trips, right? So that's the number, how many times that you went fishing, right? So maybe we got a guy who bought that SIP for a few years who all of a sudden he learned how to fish and he started going fishing more often. So that's what that is the number of trips, not the number of licenses.
Good evening.
All right.
Hey, good evening. My name is John Palmer. I have a question. Earlier, you commented that South Carolina and Florida have far greater restrictions on the creel limits. Is there data to support that their restrictions are effective, and do they have an outcome that is divergent from Georgia? We have different restrictions. Where's the data that these restrictions are effective?
So the states do similar things. We have similar surveys. We conduct similar research, whether it be independent research or dependent research. We're collecting all of the sort of same things. And for this fish, the assessment is done together. So all of the data that's collected by the other states in a similar fashion are pulled together. So this is a regional assessment. So as you saw, as Jared said, even with the states working together, we saw overfishing, and something has to be done by all three states. Florida already did it, right? They went down to 1 fish in the northeast region. They went down to a 4-fish vessel limit in the northeast region. They have no retention by guides and mates. So Florida already did it. They did that in 2022, the year after the terminal year of the assessment. So what they did hasn't been taken into account yet in an assessment. That probably won't come until 2030, 2028, 29 or 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. So now it's Georgia and South Carolina's turn. You saw what South Carolina's proposing, right? And this is what we're proposing. So the other states are doing similar things. We're collecting similar data, and we're all taking a dose of the medicine together. Yes, sir.
So there's no data to support that the change would be effective?
I don't know how to answer that. All of these changes are data-driven, right? How well you respond to this regulatory change is what affects its effectiveness. That's not right. But that's what determines how effective it is how well you guys follow 3 fish or 2 fish or 4 fish, whatever we wind up with. All right. Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Troy Pageant out of Richmond Hill. I think it would be helpful for the public to understand how fast a redfish actually grows, and to add that to information for the public when they start voting on raising the length to a minimum of 18 inches or whatnot, for them to understand that 12-inch redfish, 10-inch redfish, how quickly it actually can get to that 18-inch limit.
Yep, that's a good point. That information is in what do we call the document now? Well, it's in the assessment, yes. I was thinking more along the lines of our fishery management plan, which has a life history thing in it. But yeah, that 10 to 12-inch fish is a year old. That 18-inch fish is a year and a half old, pushing 2 years, but a year and a half old, yeah.
And so with that, I understand that it's very difficult to edit the survey monkey, but if you could do that, it would be helpful, to show that when a person's voting on raising that.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to look at the when they're voting, they're not going to go pull all the data.
Yeah. To Jared's point, SurveyMonkey is easy to change. I mean, it can be done in a matter of a few clicks of a buttons. That's not the point. The point is that we've, us knuckleheads at CRD who won't ever change our minds, right? This is how we're going to do it, and this is what we decided to do, and we've printed up paper copies for you guys tonight and all that kind of stuff. So I'm telling you, knucklehead will go back and think about whether or not to alter SurveyMonkey. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that report that has all the registry information on it, it is, the link for it, I believe, is the bottom of the town meeting's website. You don't usually need a microphone, but I do for the people listening at home, sorry. At the bottom of the website that discussed these two town hall meetings, I believe the 2022 status report on red drum, that last time that report was fully updated, the link is already there on the website.
Hey, Doug, it's me again. This young man here made a statement about the food forage to sustain red drum. This meeting was brought together for the SSBs and the SPR, long-term sustainability in measurable recruitment and adults age structure. But there is a food web that supports these for long-term sustainable goals. But the question here is, you mentioned Georgia doesn't have a de minimis list, and that is correct. But Georgia actually submits for less than 1% landings based on, I would assume, recreational language, or recreational landings. But it doesn't incorporate commercial bycatch at scale. So my question is, when you got Atlantic croaker and spot croaker repeatedly being asked for de minimis status, summer trout being asked for less than 1%, I need to clarify. And then you totally deregulate whiting, definite part of the food web. Most people in this room don't know that de minimis exists. And you don't have de minimis. You submit the same council here, the Atlantic States Fishery Management Commission, to not manage fish. It's almost, to me, like we're picking and choosing a winner, and yet, do y'all know that these fish they're not being managed? They're not asked to? If they're showing they don't have a SSB and a SPR, long-term sustainability, they just go and ask for less than 1%. They don't hold the commercial impact accountable. So how can we rebuild a red stock fishery if we don't incorporate the system and what sustains it? You can't take a fish in a fishery, hold it up, and say this is the management tool. They got to have something to eat. But we can't pick winners and losers in an ecosystem.
Okay, so just to that point, and then let's get to the survey, right? So we don't ask for de minimis based on information that we don't have. We ask for de minimis based on landings, whether we have landings or not. Some plans have recreational, some plans have commercial, some plans have them combined. And I'm not going to try to, off the top of my head, think through all the species and which are which, but it's based on landings. And you're right, we don't account for on a daily basis bycatch that goes overboard. But we did spend a number of years in the past looking at bycatch off of shrimp trawlers during the development of bycatch reduction devices. And there's some pretty firm numbers about what is typically caught in a trawl net, what species and whatnot. And so, again, out there reading the interweb, and you see all this crazy stuff about it's the trawlers that are killing red drum, and red drum aren't one of the species that occur in a trawl net. Star drum are, whiting occurs there, croaker occurs there, spot occurs there. All those species that you're concerned about are in trawls, and we don't keep up with it on a year-to-year basis, you're right. But the de minimis is based on how many fish that those folks land, not on what goes overboard. So with that, are we? One more.
I'm David Edens again. I think what we've all got to realize here is that what's being proposed has got to be able to make it through our political system. While it may not be what people like me would like, I think we just got to go with it, and we got to thank Doug for, having the guts to put it out there.
Well, I appreciate that, but don't thank me. It's a big team of folks here who collect this information. We sit at our tables and we talk about what we see and what may or may not happen. And I'm going to throw you one more, right? So Spud and I, again, we sit together on the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. We sit on a committee called the Menhaden Board. And I know that Menhaden, you guys know them as pogies, right? Aren't a big thing except for bait, right? But when we're in Delaware at a meeting and there's 100 and some odd change folks from a pogie plant in Virginia, that's when the heat's on. You guys, this is a love fest, right? Anyway, I thank you guys for your questions. I thank you for being here. Here's the next phase. We have paper copies that we're going to hand out, but you can also click the QR if you'd rather do that. And we've presented the options to you. You know, you can pick one of those 5. You can answer the question about vessel limits, and you can answer the question about captain and guides. And after you've done that, hand it to Eddie here in green, who's going to stand up and because he's at the door, and have a wonderful, blessed evening, and thank you for coming.